Remember, this is year one of the 12-team playoff in college football. It is going to be wild. We get the first playoff rankings in 12 days. Here's how the athletic sees it as of now, and it could not be better for the Big Ten. 4 teams in the bracket, most of any conference. Oregon, the top seed, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana, all in the field of 12. Buckeyes and Nittany Lions would host opening round games, while the Hoosiers would head on the road to Texas. And Fox Sports lead game analyst Joel Klatt joins us now. And Joel, I want to start with Indiana. You saw them, you had them on Big Noon last week against Nebraska, absolutely annihilated the Huskers. What impressed you the most about Indiana?
Easy. Their ability to run the football and then their defense overall. Those were 2 question marks for me coming in, to be honest with you. I didn't know if the defense was going to be for real. I thought that Rourke in that passing game and the skill position players on offense were very good players. They had been very productive previously. But remember, the offensive line for Indiana, they all came back. They weren't transfers. Other than Weddick at right tackle, coming from Wisconsin. But Rev, I didn't know if they could run the football consistently. Did it have to be in the RPO? Could they really win the line of scrimmage? And they were facing what I would consider to be one of the better run defenses with Ty Robinson and Hutmaker up front. This is a Nebraska team that had not given up a rushing touchdown, and Indiana owned them running the football. To me, that was clearly the most impressive part. And then on the defensive side, they reminded me, now listen, Michigan's defense was the best in the country last year. So it's not necessarily like Michigan from last year, but what it does remind me of kind of a Michigan-Iowa philosophy in that they're not going to borrow from parts of their defense to make themselves structurally weak in order to create pressure. So when they do that, they maintain their layers, and it becomes very hard to just drive the football down the field. So this is another way of saying this is they're going to force you to snap it 11 or 12 times in order to score rather than 4 or 5 times. And those layers and that combination of running the football, the layers on defense, I came away from that. I'm driving away from Bloomington last week, and I'm telling everybody in the car, I'm like, hey guys, that is easily a top 10 team, and that's a team that could go to Indianapolis and play for the Big Ten championship. Like, they're that good, and I thought they were that impressive.
I agree with you. I saw you had them in the top 10 in your poll this week. What's the lesson here in Cignetti's success? Like, to do this in year one, what about it could other programs that are looking to turn things around emulate?
Yeah, honestly, a lot. I mean, you can copy this. This is what's unfortunate for Cignetti is yes, there's part of it that is unique to him and his approach, and the fact that he is so persistent in adhering to the details and the process of what he has and the standards of what he has. So he's obviously just a really good football coach and has been everywhere that he's been as a head coach. So I don't want to minimize what he has done, whether it's previously or here at Indiana. However, this blueprint that he had to construct the roster is absolutely transferable to anybody that wants to use it. And it boils down to this equation. Curt Cignetti, he prioritized production over potential in the transfer portal. It didn't matter how many stars you had coming out of high school. It mattered if you produced for a good football team in previous years. And if you wanted to come up and test those skills at what is considered to be a higher level, then go ahead and come up here. Now, obviously, 9 of those guys being from JMU under his own roof where he was previously at helps. But that's not Rourke. That's not some of these other guys. And you're starting to see that if you're an all-conference player in the MAC, you can play in the Big Ten. There's no doubt. And if you can produce at a high level at these other schools in the group of 5, you can come in and be an impact player. And so this idea for anybody that's trying to build, whether it's one side of the football, the other side of the football, or the entire roster, you can copy what he did, prioritizing, again, the strategy of production over potential.
What do you make of Nebraska coming out of that game? Was it just a really bad day, or are they a little further behind than we thought they were?
Maybe both. I think maybe both can be true, because yes, it was a bad day. And you're going to have those, by the way, when you start a true freshman at quarterback. And I thought that Dylan did some nice things at the quarterback position, and he made some mistakes at that position. What I was more alarmed at, I'll go back to my first answer, was that they got owned at the line of scrimmage, and more specifically, their defensive line got owned at the line of scrimmage. That's the side of the football that, Rev, you, I, everybody that covered this conference, this league, and this team, we were surprised because that's the veteran side of the football. That's the side of the football with Tony White that has been the most consistent and the one that they could really rely on. And so the fact that it played that poorly against Indiana on the road, that was quite alarming. And now I'll have them moving forward this week against Ohio State.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that game. They definitely get the bad timing award, Nebraska, because you don't get a chance to get your legs back under. You go to Columbus, you take on Ohio State. The Buckeyes are coming off a bye. They're probably in a bad mood after what happened in Eugene. What are you most interested in seeing from Ohio State's point of view in their first game since that loss?
So two things. I think that their ability to sustain the run game, because I don't think they did a good job of that against Oregon. You know, they had the one long run from Travion Henderson, but overall, it wasn't a day in which they really controlled the game with their offensive line and their backs. So do they lean more heavily into that? I suspect that they will, in particular, based on what they saw last week from Nebraska with Indiana being able to run the football. And then the next part of this is they have to get pressure on the quarterback. And the reason that I laugh is that they could probably use the same strategy that they used against Oregon, and they could probably get to Raiola, okay? Because let's face it, like, Nebraska's offensive line has been banged up. They lost two of their veteran tackles. They're down to their third offensive tackle at left tackle, Gatula. And it's going to be a tough matchup for them. So they could probably just rush four straight ahead and get to the quarterback, and then everyone would be like, well, okay, we fixed the pressure issues. But in reality, we don't really know if the pressure issues have been fixed, because when it comes to matchup games and the big games, in particular the ones that they've lost, the pass rush has disappeared over the last few years. I think a lot has been written about this and talked about this, but this really is why they've been giving up these big plays. 8 explosive plays they gave up against Oregon, in large part because they didn't get to the quarterback and Dylan Gabriel. So for me, Rev, I want to see, like, is there more creative schematics in terms of pressure and how they're getting to the quarterback? Are they stunting more? Are they going to twist more? Are they going to add the jack position, which is kind of a mainstay in Jim Knowles' defense prior to Ohio State? Because remember, Jim Knowles, when he was at Oklahoma State, without great pass rushers, led the country in pressures and sacks his last year. And this is not really the scheme that he used at Oklahoma State. It's a hybrid of that. So I'm interested to see if something changes on the defensive side.
We'll keep an eye on that. And as you mentioned, that's your game, big noon. You guys will be there in Columbus. I do want to ask you real quick before I let you go about our primetime game here on the Big Ten Network.
Yeah.
We got Michigan and Michigan State, two teams that feel like they're on different trajectories. I mean, man, Michigan State played really well, particularly at the line of scrimmage against Iowa. We know what's going on here with Michigan. What does this game mean in your mind to two first-year head coaches at those respective programs?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is monumental because of the nature of the rivalry. Rev, I would venture out and just say, like, for Michigan and Sharon Moore, this is a must. This is a must. You cannot, the year after winning the national championship, and with everything that went on specifically that week last year, and you remember, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is when it all came out, right? And then they went up there and they shut them out and they beat them down. You cannot go out there and lose to a first-year head coach at Michigan State. I just don't think that I don't think that the narrative will survive. And maybe it will, but Jonathan Smith is a really good football coach, and this Michigan State team is sound, and they beat Iowa at their own game, and it's going to be a difficult game for Michigan. There's no doubt about it, and this is a program right now that is reeling a little bit, and I will just say this about Michigan. There's a good chance that it gets worse before it gets better for Michigan. Think about it from the schedule that they've got going on in the back half of the year, which is incredibly difficult, and they still don't know what's going on at quarterback and on their offensive side. And in the offseason, they're going to lose 4 first-round draft picks. So right now, like, we are in a period, in a pocket, where right now for Michigan, it doesn't look good, and in all likelihood, it could get worse before it gets better.
That should be a really interesting game on Saturday night at the Big House. And as you say, a lot of pressure, no doubt. on the maize and blue. This is a huge weekend in the Big Ten. Really looking forward to it. Can't wait to hear your call with Gus and Jenny, Big Noon on Saturday. Always appreciate your time. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, man. Good to be here.